Narrative design is the discipline of shaping how players experience meaning within a game. It goes beyond simply telling a story and instead focuses on how narrative emerges through interaction, through systems, mechanics, space, and player choice. My name is Kjeld Stormarnson, and this is From a Narrative Perspective. I'm active in the game development community, and here I'll be exploring topics from the game industry together with you. Where traditional storytelling delivers a fixed sequence of events, narrative design creates the conditions in which stories can be experienced, interpreted, or sometimes even co-created by the player. At its core, it's about aligning what a game does with what it means. This inherently makes narrative design an interdisciplinary practice. A narrative designer rarely works in isolation, instead they operate at the intersection of multiple departments. They collaborate with game designers to align mechanics with narrative intent, ensuring that player actions reinforce the themes and tone of the game. They work with level designers to structure spaces in ways that communicate story through layout, pacing, and discovery. They coordinate with artists and audio designers to support atmosphere, symbolism, and emotional framing. At the same time, they often interface with writers, not to replace them, but to contextualize and integrate written content into the larger player experience. In this sense, the narrative designer acts as a bridge, translating narrative goals into systems, spaces, and interactions. This is also where the distinction between narrative design and game writing becomes clear. Game writers primarily focus on authored content, dialogue, lore, character, backstories, and descriptive text. The work defines what is being said. Narrative designers, on the other hand, focus on how and when that information is encountered and how it interacts with the player agency. Where a writer might craft a compelling character arc, the narrative designer ensures that this arc is reflected in gameplay, through choices, consequences, and systematic feedback. The two roles are closely connected, but they operate on different layers of experience. Tools like Artisy Draft or Trying can play an important role in the process, particularly during the conceptual and structural phases of development. They allow narrative designers to prototype branching structures, map out dialogue flows, and visualize how information and choices are distributed across the experience. These tools are especially useful for thinking in terms of possibilities rather than linear sequences, enabling designers to anticipate player behavior and design for multiple outcomes. However, while these tools are powerful for planning, they represent only one part of the workflow. Equally important is the ability to work within the game engine itself. Narrative design does not remain abstract, it must be implemented, tested, and iterated within an actual playable environment. This is particularly crucial when environmental storytelling is involved. Environmental storytelling refers to the communication of narrative through the game world itself, through spatial design, object placement, lighting, sound, and subtle visual cues. Instead of explicitly telling the player what happened, the environment allows them to infer or interpret events. For a narrative designer, this means engaging directly with the engine to shape how these elements come together in real time. Placing props, adjusting lighting, triggering audio, or scripting small interactions can all contribute to how a player perceives a space and its underlying story. In this context, the environment becomes a narrative system in its own right, one that the player reads through exploration rather than exposition. Because of this, environmental storytelling is not just an optional layer, but often a central component of narrative design. It allows for a more immersive and player-driven form of storytelling, where meaning is discovered rather than delivered. The narrative designer's role is to orchestrate these elements in a way that feels coherent, intentional, and responsive to players' behavior. Ultimately, narrative design is about integration. It ensures that story is not treated as a separate layer added on top of gameplay, but as something embedded within every aspect of the experience. It is the discipline that asks not only what is the story, but how is the player living it?